Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of January 2021. I almost said 2020 there for a second, and I didn't. Proud of myself. I read these 5 books that I have here, plus another that I do not have physically, so I completed my entire Scrabble TBR for January, and I also threw in a 6th book just for fun, so that goal successfully completed, and the 6 books I read totaled 2,670 pages with an average star rating of about 3.67. Really happy with that, so let's just get into what I read. The first book I read in the new year was the book that I rated the lowest this month, and it is the one that I don't have a physical copy of, so we're just gonna get this one out of the way first, and then we can talk about books that I enjoyed more. This was for the prompt Cat. My cat picked this book out for me, and it was Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. I know a lot of people love this thriller, however, I ended up only giving it 2 stars. Her Eyes features a woman named Louise who hooks up with this man named David, and she ends up finding out that David is her new boss, her new married boss. David is married to Adele, who Louise ends up befriending, though Adele does not know that Louise kissed her husband, and David and Adele's marriage may not be as perfect as it appears. This is a thriller, and it features both timelines set in the present with Louise and Adele today, and also some chapters set in the past to explore David and Adele's relationship. I can't say much more about this book, and I am going to be vague when discussing my issues with this book because I don't want to spoil the events, and I do have a review on Goodreads with spoiler sections, so if you have read this book or just don't care about spoilers, then you can go to that review in the description and click on my spoilers for more specific thoughts. Going into this book, I was a bit apprehensive because I knew that it had a plot element that I generally don't like in thrillers. However, I knew about it going in, and I think that made it a little more enjoyable for me because I knew that this was going to be an element in the book. And the reason I don't like this trope, element, whatever, I'm trying not to say what it is, it's in the Goodreads review if you want to know, is because I think it makes the resolution to the mystery very difficult to predict if you don't know that this is going to be a part of the book. Hopefully that makes sense. But because I did know this trope was in the book, it helped me when trying to predict what was going to happen. There were some things that I saw coming and some things that I only saw coming right before they actually happened. And I will say that the final twist blew my mind. I did not see it coming at all. I was leaning towards giving this book 3 stars before the final twist happened. However, while the final twist was shocking, I do think the optics of it are not great. I don't know Sarah Pinborough. I really don't know anything about her as a person, so I don't want to accuse her of intentional prejudice. However, I think that elements of the final twist in this book could potentially be offensive towards certain groups of people, and therefore I had some issues with the implications of the overall ending. I did find some elements of this ending questionable. I'm sorry if that didn't make a lot of sense. It's hard to explain my specific thoughts about this book without spoiling it, and obviously I don't want to do that, so if you want to see the spoilers and my more specific thoughts, you can go to my Goodreads review. The next word I spelled in my Scrabble TBR game was tune, so I had to read a book that reminded me of the first song that came up on my Spotify shuffle. And for that prompt, I read an epic fantasy, The Queens of Innis, Lear by Tessa Gratton. I gave this 3.5 stars. This novel mainly follows 3 sisters, Gayla, Reagan, and Elia, who are all competing to become the next queen of Innis Lear, their father's kingdom. This is a retelling of Shakespeare's King Lear, and if you have read that play as I have, then you can definitely predict where the plot is going in many ways. However, that's just a part of reading a retelling. It is retelling another story, so I don't think that is a big fault of the book. That's just what you sign up for when you're reading a retelling. I was torn between 3 and 4 stars for this book because while I did enjoy it overall, I did have some issues with it. I really liked the world in this book. The island of Innis Lear felt so vivid and alive, and I love what Tessa Gratton did with the Goneril and Regan characters from King Lear. In this book, Gala and Regan's motivations and their reasons for resenting their father are made much more clear, and I love how they are complicated characters who aren't necessarily the best people, but are very interesting to read about. Regan was the most interesting character in this book, in my opinion. I will say, I think Gala is heavily coded as an aromantic, asexual character, and it is very stereotypical representation because people who are aromantic and or asexual, there's a stereotype that they are cold, and that's why they do not desire romantic and or sexual relationships, which is not true, and Gala is a very cold-hardened character, so I did feel like that was a bit of a stereotype. It wasn't offensive to me personally, however, it's not exactly the best representation. An issue I had with this book was that I think Elia was a very flat character and I had a hard time getting invested in her storyline. I wish she had been fleshed out a bit more. I also think the character of Ban, who is the bastard son of the Duke of Argyll, I did not fully buy into his motivations for some of his actions. And finally, the ending was too open-ended for my taste. I think it could have been developed a bit more. There is another book set in this universe that I think answers some of the questions we're left with. However, it takes place centuries after the events of this book, and I don't think I liked this book enough to justify reading the sequel. It's not something I'm super interested in, though I did want to give this 3.5 stars because I did enjoy it. I just think there were some issues that prevented me from giving a full 4 stars. I do have a longer Goodreads review for this book as well, so I will link that in the description if you want to check it out. Next, for the prompt night, I read a sequel, and that is A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir, the sequel to An Ember in the Ashes, and I gave this 4 stars. Because this is a sequel, I cannot tell you too much about it without spoiling the first book, so I will just say this is a young adult fantasy series that takes place in a world inspired by the Roman Empire. I loved the first book, An Ember in the Ashes, and this one I still really enjoyed, though I did not like it as much as the first book. I think the plot was not as intriguing and exciting as the first book. However, I do really enjoy the characters in this series, and the reveal towards the end of the book, it messed me up. I was emotionally compromised. I think I am gonna do a quick spoiler section so I can talk about my feelings on that reveal. So while spoilers is on the screen, either fast forward or mute this video if you don't want to be spoiled, and when it goes away, you are in the clear. Okay. So, when I read the first book, honestly, I preferred Leia and Keenan as a couple to Leia and Elias. And I preferred Elias with Helen, honestly. I don't know if her name is actually supposed to be pronounced Helen, but that's how I've been saying it in my head. I think I might be saying it wrong. Anyways, however, I knew Leia and Elias are the main couple of this series. So I wondered if maybe Keenan's character was going to be vilified in some way in the second book in order to get the reader to root for Leia and Elias as a couple. So that did cross my mind. However, when I was reading this book, it never occurred to me that Keenan was the Nightbringer. And when that was revealed, I was shook. I was shook. I considered, like, is the Nightbringer Elias's dad? Is that possible? I considered that for half a second. We actually did find out that Harper is his half-brother and Harper's father was his father. But the good thing about the Keenan reveal, even though it kind of devastated me, is in retrospect, there was foreshadowing for it that completely went over my head. The Nightbringer is the king of the Jinn, and it's mentioned that Jinn are naturally hot, and Leia mentions that Keenan is really warm because he's not human. Oh, I was shook. I was so upset, but it was such a well done twist. I can't be that mad about it. I could have seen it coming, and I didn't, so props, Saboteur. You wrecked me. You wrecked me. So while I did not love the pacing of this as much as I did the first book, overall, super enjoyable, and I am excited to see where this series is going to go. The good thing about starting a series after all the books are already out means the next 2 books are already published and awaiting my consumption, so I don't have to wait years for the next book. I am excited to see where this series is going to go, and so far, I'm really enjoying it. Now I'm going to go a bit out of order here because though this was the last book I read in January, I don't think I have as much to say about it as the other 2 books I want to discuss, so I'm just going to do this one next. For the prompt Face, a book with a face on the cover, I read Romantic Outlaws, The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley by Charlotte Gordon, and I gave this 4 stars. This is a biography of Mary Wollstonecraft, the feminist writer, and her daughter, Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. And it's really interesting how Charlotte Gordon alternates between chapters about Mary Wollstonecraft and chapters about Mary Shelley, so that you're reading about their lives side by side so you can see the parallels in their stories. Overall, this book had a lot of new and interesting information. I do think I enjoyed the Mary Shelley parts more, but maybe that's just because I'm biased. I knew more about Mary Shelley going in, and I am super interested in her life. I absolutely love Frankenstein. It's one of my favorite classics. So, overall, this book had a lot of interesting new information, and I really wanted to read it because this semester at college I am taking a class about Mary and Percy Shelley, so I thought this would be a good little appetizer before that class. Also, this class I'm taking on the Shelleys is called Parallel Lives, and it's about comparing the Shelleys to the Brownings. So I think it's interesting that I picked up a book that also compared these lives to see parallels. I didn't realize that going in, so that's kind of a fun coincidence. And the last prompt on my Scrabble TBR was to read a new book, and so I had my viewers vote for which book I should read from my most recent book haul. The 2 top vote getters were The Vanished Bride by Bella Ellis and The One by John Mars. The Vanished Bride finished in first, and The One was a close second, so I read them both. First, I read The Vanished Bride by Bella Ellis, which is the first in the Bronte Sisters mystery series, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. This is a historical mystery in which the Bronte sisters, Emily, Charlotte, and Anne, decide that they are going to investigate the mysterious disappearance of a local woman. She disappears from her house without a trace, but there is a large pool of blood left behind. Overall, the resolution to the mystery was not shocking to me. I did see parts of it coming. However, I still enjoyed this book because it was just so much fun. I love what the author did with the Bronte sisters' characters and their relationship to one another, and I think in terms of the pacing and the writing style, it reminded me a bit of an Agatha Christie novel, and I really enjoy Agatha Christie mysteries, so I loved the overall vibes of this. I will definitely be picking up the next book in the Bronte sisters mystery series. Finally, I read The One by John Mars, and I gave this 4.5 stars. The one is a thriller with light sci-fi elements. The best thing that I can compare it to is an episode of Black Mirror. This takes place in the near future in a world where this website called Match Your DNA has been created. And this site claims that if you give them a swab of your DNA, they will find you your soulmate, the one person in the entire world who you are meant to be with. This book follows a large cast of point-of-view characters, including Mandy, a divorced woman who is anxious to find her soulmate and have children; Jade, a woman who has been communicating with her soulmate via text messages and finally surprises him in Australia, hoping to finally meet; Christopher, a psychopath who may have finally met his match; Ellie, a successful businesswoman with little time to date who finally gets a match on the site; and Nick, a man who is engaged to be married, however his fiancée wants them to take the Match Your DNA test before their wedding to make sure they are really soulmates. The chapters in this book are very short, and there are so many little reveals and twists along the way, which makes you want to keep reading. I decided to pick up this book so I would have something else to read at the same time I was reading Romantic Outlaws, because that is a big nonfiction. I wanted something else that I could read on the side. However, I got so engrossed in the plot of this book that I read it in 2 days, and I didn't read any of Romantic Outlaws in those 2 days. I meant to read this on the side, and it ended up becoming my #1 priority until I was finished. This book was intensely readable, and I devoured it wanting answers. There were some things in the book that I saw coming, and other things that I did not predict. Overall, I did really enjoy this. However, I think the ending was a little too abrupt in some aspects for my tastes. There were also a few lines here and there in the female characters' point of views that just came across to me like a man definitely wrote it. Like, oh, her trainer told her that she wasn't supposed to have carbs after 6 p.m. Or the thing that she hated about pregnancy was that she couldn't wear skinny jeans and high heels anymore. I was like, yeah, a man wrote that for sure. All in all, though, this book was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I would like to read more John Marrs books in the future. This is also being adapted for Netflix, so when that series comes out, I will definitely be tuning in. So these are the books that I read in January. Let me know in the comments section, did you read any of these books? And if so, what did you think of them? Please give this video a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every single Wednesday. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an impressive rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you in the next one.